Hi, and welcome to another edition of the Sustainable Scoop. If you watch this show regularly, you know the focus is sustainability in our region, and I live here in Arlington, so that's one of the places I care most about. Right now, today, I have the pleasure of having Peter Rusolo with me. He's also an Arlington resident. Welcome, Peter.
Thank you very much. Enjoy it.
Well, listen, I'm so glad you're here because green space and park space and trees are all big issues to Arlingtonians. And I understand that there's a discussion that they're having at the county board level that could affect Arlington's residents 20 years in the future. Tell me about that.
That's right, Miriam. It's a very important discussion because for the last couple of years, Arlington has been trying to develop a master plan for the next 20 years to cover guidelines, create guidelines for our green space, sports fields, casual use of our parks, a 20-year planning document that will affect all kinds of decisions as we move forward. And this is going on while we're planning to grow. We're projecting population growth of 40,000 more residents between now and 2040. And so parks are going to be places that they'll all want to use, and we want to be sure that we're using them in the way that residents most want.
Well, not only that residents most want, but also recognizing that these are shared spaces. It's not like our schools where we need a seat for every student. We need space for people of all ages and all backgrounds. And I understand that one of the biggest issues, or the rubs, as they say, are the fields that are allocated to sports teams as opposed to what Arlingtonians have really been demanding, which is more trails and casual space. Can you tell me about what's happening there?
Yes, well, a couple of years ago, the Arlington County government did a statistically valid survey of residents, and it asked them a series of questions about what were their priorities for using our parks. And as you just said, the highest priorities were trails, casual use space, open green space. Those were the things that they ranked the highest. And in this environment where we're having this increased population and increased demand for all different kinds of things, it's really important that we are using all of these facilities in accordance with what residents want, but also using them the most efficiently. We have to share, in some cases, things that in the past we may not have utilized as efficiently as possible.
And based on, talking about efficiency, I mean, there is some data to calculate how often fields are used and when they're not being used and the general demand. But my understanding is that that information has not been incorporated into this 20-year plan. Can you explain why?
I wish I could explain exactly why, but it's absolutely true that data that has come from the files of the Department of Parks and Recreation that's in their files, they didn't use it to estimate how many fields we might need in Arlington. Instead, what they did is they used a methodology, something that they call population-based level of service. And it's supposed to, if it's done right, the way national consultants say it should be done, it should have incorporated data on actual utilization, supply, and demand of Arlington's parks, but they didn't really do that. And as a result, a group of residents discovered over a period of many months of asking questions and putting out Freedom of Information Act requests, they unearthed this data that the Department of Parks and Recreation actually had that showed a very different picture in terms of what the likely estimate of utilization should be.
I've looked at some of those numbers, and the discrepancy is wide. I mean, they're reaching out and saying in 20 years they could use 11 more field spaces, but based on the data right now, it looks like the space is underutilized and could probably be made available to more residents. So this is a critical time. I understand that most of the county board is inclined to go along with what the Department of Parks and Recreation has to say. John Weistat did suggest that he would prefer look at the data and maybe do a separate study that really looks at what all Arlington residents want. Katie Cristall, I spoke to her, and she admits that, you know, the cost to the county for these additional spaces and maintaining them is great, not to mention there's a desire for all Arlingtonians to be able to utilize it. So what is this group trying to do? What is it that you're hoping to accomplish before this plan is signed off on?
Well, what we're hoping to accomplish is something along the lines of what John Weisstadt was recommending, and that is that before this current methodology that's in the study that estimates that we need a lot more fields than we think we really will need, before that's set in stone for the next 20 years, or any number of years really, that we have this separate proceeding where we can have all parties, all citizens, residents, sports teams, people who want natural space.
All Arlingtonians,
all
the
Arlingtonians,
entire
that's right.
county of Arlington.
Right, before it's set in stone. And I know that Chairman Crystal has said, well, you don't have to worry about this because even if we enact this plan with this, what we consider to be really flawed approach, we could always look at this later when we're trying to plan an individual park.
Well, I think that having listened to a little bit from Eric Gutschall and then again from Katie, they do definitely recognize the concern and appreciate the work that you've done. Now we just have to make sure that it's incorporated into the plan. So what people should do right now to activate and reach out to the county board, what else can they do to get involved and influence this plan?
I think they should do everything that you just said. They should reach out to the county board. They should reach out to their civic associations. They should reach out to other people that they know in county government, and they should just urge them not to pass this plan until this issue is straightened out and the data that DPR actually has in its files is properly utilized, because millions and millions and millions of dollars could be wasted on in a way that we don't need to spend it.
And that's not sustainable. And I appreciate the fact that Arlington has always been about looking down the road long term for visionaries and wanting to always make this community a sustainable place for everyone, now and forever. So I want to thank you so much and your team, Peter Ruslo, for following this story and bringing it to us today. And I want to thank all of you for watching The Sustainable Scoop. If you go to our YouTube channel, you'll be able to find places where you can sign up and maybe a change.org account or add your name to the list so that we can affect change in this particular area. Thanks so much, and back to the news desk.